Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to be making sounds. So we'll have a muzzle sound and we'll have an impact sound. Let's dive in and see how we're going to do that. In the process, we're going to learn how we can attach sounds to other components so they move with them, such as the muzzle. So now that we've got a nice and tidy pull trigger function, it's quite clear where we want to be making sound effects. Now, in my game, the only real sound effects I want are on the muzzle flash and on basically the impact. So the places where we're already spawning emitters, I just want to add sound to that. Now, that's relatively straightforward. We've done some similar things in the past with gameplay statics. You can do a play sound at location, which is going to play that sound unattached to any object, so it won't be moving around. It'll just stay fixed in that location until it's finished. However, we also want to be able to play an attached sound in the same way as we're playing an attached emitter up at the top. And for that, that's fairly straightforward. What we're going to look for, though, is, first of all, we're passing in this type. And let's try and understand that a little bit better. So we've got the play sound at location, which takes in the world context, but it also takes in this U sound base. Now, why is it a sound base and not just a sound wave? Because if we go over into Unreal, go into our asset packs, shooter game, sounds, weapon assault rifle, and mono, you're going to see that if we hover over any of these clips, then the type here is sound wave. And that actually corresponds to a type in Unreal called U sound wave. And if we go and have a look at that sound wave class, you can see that it inherits from U sound base. So what is sound base? What else inherits from it? Well, something called an audio cue or sound cue, which we're going to be using in the next lecture, which allows us to do more complicated things with sound waves, such as randomize them and modulate their pitch. So we're not interested in those just yet, but just know that these functions will work just as well whether we're passing in a single sound wave or a collection of sound waves gathered together in a sound cue, and that's by virtue of the fact that they take in a sound base, which encompasses both of those types. So what's useful is if we go and look through our gameplay statics for the use of sound base, what else can we play a sound with? Well, here there's a spawn sound at location, a slightly different variation on the previous function. You can see here it returns the audio component that it's spawned. We're not interested in that one though. What we are interested in is our spawn sound attached. Now, this takes in our sound, and then it also takes in a component that we want to attach it to, as well as an optional attach point if we're dealing with a skeletal mesh. So that's the one we're going to want to use. So I'm going to go over into our gun CPP, and in order to call it, we're going to need a sound to call it with. So we're going to add that to our configuration in the header file, where I'm going to add ourselves a new U property, and I'm going to add it just under our muzzle flash called U sound base. It's going to be the type star, and it's going to be the muzzle sound, like so. And that we can then configure in the editor. And I'm going to go over to the gun CPP, and we're going to spawn, so it's U gameplay statics again, and we're going to call spawn sound attached. And we're going to pass in this time, instead of the muzzle flash, the muzzle sound. Then we've got to attach it to a mesh and to a socket. And actually for that, I'm just going to copy both the mesh and the socket from above, because we want to be doing it to exactly the same location, essentially having the sound come out of the end of the barrel of our gun. And if we go ahead and compile, we should be able to go over to our rifle BP and find a new property. Sure enough, when the compile finished, the muzzle sound property popped up here, and we can select from the drop-down one of the sound wave files. We don't currently have any sound cues, or we do, they come from the engine, but we don't want any of those. We're just going to go with the assault rifle shot. And if we go and play, you can see that we are getting the correct sound effect when firing the rifle. So it's now time for your challenge to play the sound at location. That is the function you've probably used before to play an impact sound, of which we have a few in here. When I did my drop down, you could see there was the assault rifle shots. But if we also look for assault rifle, we can see that there are these impact concrete sounds as well, so you might want to choose one of those. So you're going to play an impact sound, going to use the play sound at location from gameplay statics, hook it up and test it out to see that you're getting both of those sounds in your world. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, welcome back. So let's give this a shot. First things first, let's set up the configuration. So I'm going to mostly copy the configuration from the muzzle sound, put it underneath the impact effect, and I'm going to call it the impact sound. Then what we're going to do is just set it off compiling because we made a change to our header file and I want it to be quick. Then we're going to go down to where we're spawning our emitter at a location. We're going to do a new U gameplay statics, : and we're going to be doing instead of spawn sound attached, it's going to be a play sound at location. We're going to have to give it a world context, so I'm going to do a get world. Then we're going to give it the sound that we want it to play, which is going to be the impact sound. And then we need to give it a location to play the sound at, which is going to be the same as the location for doing our particle effect. And direction doesn't matter in this case, because our sound is going to be the same in all directions. Put a semicolon on the end of that line and go and compile it and head over to the BP rifle where we now have the new configuration variable for the impact sound. As I said, there's going to be something with impact concrete in it, so I'm going to go and select number 1 from that. Go ahead and play and try this out. And as you just heard there, we were getting an impact sound when we were hitting something. And if we weren't hitting anything but just shooting, all you were hearing was the rifle muzzle sound. So that's it for this lecture. We've seen how we can spawn a sound attached to an object. The next lecture, we're going to be looking at how we can randomize those sounds so they aren't always exactly the same every time they're played. See you there.